Video I'm going to try and answer the question of, is evolution disproved by the second law of thermodynamics? So let's start by looking at what the argument is. So the argument goes something like this. The second law of thermodynamics, in a very simplified sense, prevents the increase in order of a system. Okay? Evolution increases the order of a system, so therefore the argument goes that evolution can't be true. The second law says you can't increase in order. Evolution increases the order in the sense that a bit of bacteria is a lot less ordered than a big complicated human being. So this is the argument that you will find in creationist literature. So let's take a look at what the second law of thermodynamics says. So, the entropy of an isolated system never decreases. Such systems spontaneously evolve towards a thermodynamic equilibrium, the state of maximum entropy of the system. In essence, this is saying that for an isolated system, it's always going to get more disordered. That's a very simplified way of looking at it. And you'll see we have a slight problem here. And in order to make this fit with reality, we need to leave out a few key phrases. This is a problem, and we'll see why. So what is an isolated system? This is the key point to understand. An isolated system is a thermodynamic system, which is completely enclosed by walls through which can pass neither matter nor energy, though they can move around inside it. Essentially, this means that energy or stuff, such as mass, can't get into your system. A good example of this is a flask that you would keep tea or coffee. If this was completely enclosed, so it was an isolated system, then this tea or coffee would never ever cool down, because the energy could never get out. It is completely isolated from its surroundings. You may have noticed this description doesn't apply to the Earth. The Earth is not completely separated from its surroundings. So the Earth is obviously not an isolated system. We have a thing known as the Sun, and from the Sun we get energy. That's why plants photosynthesize. Without this energy there would be nothing on Earth. So we can conclude that the second law does not apply. Period. You cannot apply the second law of thermodynamics to something that is not an isolated system. Therefore, you can't apply it to the Earth, because the Earth is most definitely not an isolated system. The second law was never intended to describe such systems. So you see, we have to obscure quite a lot of science before this statement becomes plausible. I mean, we've pretty much ignored the whole of the isolated systems point. If you read creationist literature, they tend to sort of zoom over the whole idea of what an isolated system is and sort of pretend that the second law simply says that you can't increase order, which is a bit of an overstatement. But the interesting thing is, we don't even need to look at the science to see that there are serious problems with this reasoning. Philosophy, specifically epistemology, gives us a good basis for saying that there is something wrong with the reasoning. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. So if we suppose that they were right, we have three options. The first thing we could say is that the second law is true and evolution is false. We could also argue that evolution is true and the second law is false, and option C is something else, absolutely any other possible theory or combination that could conceivably be thought of. Those are not automatically ruled out. There could be some third factor that is responsible for the inconsistency, or something going on that we don't quite understand. It's also important to realize, actually, how do we know evolution and how do we know the second law of thermodynamics? The thing is, we know evolution from lots of different sources. We've got observation, we can look at high-speed evolution. In more recent times we've got genomics through the Human Genome Project and other forms of DNA evidence. We can look at the fossil record, so you can see species and common ancestors and how all of these move through time, which is very consistent with the theory of evolution. You have artificial selection. You can look at evolution happening in a very short space of time by controlling which individuals breed with other individuals. That's why you have so many different breeds of dogs. And you can also look at the geography, the geographic distribution of animals was one of the major pieces of evidence that Darwin used in formulating his theory of evolution. And the second law, by comparison, is mainly based through inductive reasoning. For example, when we observe isolated systems, we see that they obey a certain law. That absolutely every system that we've observed that is an isolated system has followed those laws. If we found a system that didn't, that theory would be thrown into disarray. There would be a big problem finding that isolated system for which did not do as it was supposed to. So really I would argue that option B is more plausible. That is, that evolution is true and the second law is false. This isn't a statement of certainty, it's just a balance of probabilities. In the sense that evolution would be that observation that called into question the second law. The second law, if it could be applied to this, would be saying that this thing can't happen, but the observations of evolution would be saying, but it did happen. So we would have a situation where one law says it can't happen, but the evidence said it did happen. So this would be a problem for the second law more than a problem for evolution, because evolution is that observation that you would need to undo the inductive reasoning. There is, of course, more problems than this. I would say that the other problem that the philosophy throws up was described by Eugenie Scott as the two-factor model, which is this idea that it's creation or evolution. That if you disprove evolution, then absolutely everything in creationism is true, and then it just extends on and on and on with absolutely every creationist claim is completely true. The Bible is true, prayer in school, morality, can't have gay marriage, everything suddenly becomes true. You can see this amazing tangent that they can go on once you've disproved one tiny aspect of evolution. It's quite remarkable to read. But this may seem obvious to you, but to some people it doesn't seem obvious. But disproving evolution disproves evolution. It just says that evolution is not the theory that fits the data, and then there is sort of an open bidding, if you like, for the better theory, the theory that better fits the data. And evolution is a remarkable fit for the data. So disproving evolution is not proof of creationism, it's just disproof of evolution, and it's now open to absolutely any competing theory. And disproving one aspect of evolution does not disprove evolution. Simply, the result is evolution minus X. The theory is not destroyed, it is in fact improved by disproving one small aspect. It is now a better fit to the data. You've now got a better model. Disproving one aspect does not mean you can throw out the whole of it. So basically, to conclude, the second law is frankly irrelevant. The Earth is not an isolated system. We have a thing called the Sun, therefore there is energy transfer happening. There is no big box surrounding the Earth preventing energy transfer, or at least I've never looked up and seen a massive box that stops all the sun energy and all the plants dying because they can't photosynthesize. The Earth is absolutely not an isolated system, and the second law is absolutely to do with isolated systems. There is a massive contradiction between reality and what they are claiming the second law really means. It is totally incorrect to say that evolution is disproved by the second law, because it cannot be, it does not apply, period. So, that's the end of the science. On to the philosophy that we looked at. So, if it was in fact relevant, if we just suppose that it was relevant, you wouldn't even disprove evolution, because of the problem of induction. Evolution would be the observation that calls into question the second law. But even just giving them an immense benefit of the doubt, saying even if it did disprove evolution, it wouldn't even prove creationism. So they're not getting really far with this. The science is against them, that it wouldn't prove evolution even if the science was on their side, and even if they were successful in proving evolution, they wouldn't have proven creationism. So they're failing at every single step. I would recommend after watching this video that you read the creationist literature, and hopefully you can see the enormous holes and misunderstandings that are perpetuated in this this little echo chamber that they've built. So hopefully I've educated you and given you some interesting science and philosophy, and thank you for watching.